All right, guys, we're going to talk about in class today some basics about drawing. We're going to talk about how to use a center line, why we would want to use a center line. There's a specific reason for it in dividing shapes up. And then we're also going to talk about a great method of drawing using what I call additive and subtractive shapes. So before we begin, I want to show you some work from a really talented, awesome artist. His name is Feng Zhu. He has a wonderful website that's really fantastic to look at. Okay, and any one of you in this class can go up to his website. He also has even free little demos where he's painting, and he has hundreds of them. He has a huge amount. In fact, let's just pull it up really quick. It's always awesome to get to promote other artists. I find it really important as a entertainment artist and artist in general to be able to show you somebody else's stuff, because that way, it's just not me preaching my approach to something. This is just a general approach. But if you go to Feng Zhu Design, okay, and if he has some tutorials up here on Google, and if you click on these, it's absolutely wonderful. So looking at what he did and watching him grow. And when I say that, watching him grow, there was a point back in the time I never met Feng, but I've seen his work progress because I saw some of the Noman DVDs. I know some people that were around him, and I think it's really cool to watch an artist develop over 10 or 15 years and blossom. And he's one of those guys, I think, that are a perfect testament to if you just keep drawing, you keep designing, you keep painting, you keep growing and growing and getting better and better at what you do. So if you look up here, just check that out, right? Isn't that an awesome resource? Look at this. All those videos right there of him working. And you can click on any one of those. And look, let's just click this one right here. And he's going to be... it's in his best interest to do these videos because it's awesome. It promotes his school. He has a school that's in the Philippines, and he just talks about his approach and how he blocks in shapes, how he gets in there. He's talking about his paintings and how he starts working on something, and then he's going to start putting in some detail, blocking in some color, and so on. So what's really great about these is they're free, folks. So you can go online and watch somebody doing something that, that they produce. And this is something that, I should do this more. I should record myself working, but I don't because I'm I do sometimes, and then I put it up, and then other times I just get locked into my work, and I find it distracting to have Camtasia recording. He's become really good at this, where he just sits and he draws, and he can just work and record his stuff. So he's a really talented artist. There are DVDs out there about him, that you can watch. Hold on, what happened to my viewer here? Well, let me force quit something. Force quit, preview. I don't know what happened to it. There it goes. Now I'm going to open this up right now. Okay, there we go. So let's take a look. So these are some of his sketches that he has, right? We're going to talk a little bit about this today. So one of the common things that you're going to notice, let's start with this one right here, okay, with the cars, is that you have this feeling of whenever he's drawing a prop, a bug, or a vehicle, that it anchors to the ground. There is solid perspective that exists there. And part of that perspective is because he's drawing these vehicles on grids that exist using two vanishing points. And there's a huge benefit to doing that versus just drawing something out of your head without having any ground plane there or indication of a grid plane. Can be a big mistake because your angles end up being off, especially when it comes to this right here. When you have to figure out how to develop and properly draw ellipses. Ellipses are really difficult. They never get easy, but if you understand how to draw a square and how a square looks in perspective, then you could get in and you can start crafting out shapes like this. And this is the direction that we're going to start moving into. So it's what we're going to start doing pretty soon is after the trace overs, I'm going to give you an assignment where we're going to start drawing some basic bugs. Okay, so it's not just because of the influence of Feng Zhu. There are lots of other really good instructors that do the same thing. Okay, so there's some great instructors at CGMA that I taught with that I know that they do the same thing. They have students go out and draw a series of props and bugs and insects and planes and vehicles by using simple boxes and shapes to construct them. Okay, and then there's also some of those instructors at CGMA also teach at Concept Design Academy too. Some of them teach at Kazone, which is out here in Irvine. And a lot of them went to different art schools, some went to Art Center, but this is just a basic approach to drawing. So there's tons of drawing books out there. The good drawing books talk about and explain the importance of understanding solidity and shape and how that works with perspective, and then how you develop that on your own. Okay, so I will put these images up on a blog here, but they're really cool. I mean, look at every one of those. You can look at and you can feel the particular bug coming out of there, and it makes sense. There's a tangibility to it. Now, I know it looks a little crazy, you know, but I want to show you this right here. This is what's important, because we're going to talk about this in just a minute here. You see this little square here on the ground? Okay? Yeah. That square, do you see right here, there's a line going down the middle. That line, remember I showed you guys, I mentioned that little T? That's that little T. Okay, that's the center line right there, down there on that ground. That center line is really imperative. The reason why it's imperative is because we have to understand how those legs are coming out. Those legs are coming out from the middle of that body, right? So therefore, in order to draw the legs correctly on the other side, you have to be able to draw through the shape. To draw through the shape, you have to understand where the center line is on an object. Now, are you going to have to draw through the shape on a blender? Maybe not as much, because it's just sort of a cylinder in a little cube that's tall, and there's nothing coming out of the center of it. But then there are certain other props where that's going to happen. So now that we took a look at some of this awesome sketches that are up here, okay? And the great thing about work like this is, like my friend Patrick Ballesteros, right? He will go to a couple of the natural history museums. He'll go to there's the wonderful, some World War II, some local museums that have World War II. We have the museum in downtown LA where the space shuttle's at, right? What's that one called? I always forget that one, where they have the whole space shuttle and the science and aeronautics museum. Okay, and people, you go in there and you sit down and you just draw all this wonderful stuff that's all around you. So there's tons of local museums, discovery centers, and all this different areas that are great to go out and sketch from, because you're looking at these props and you're sketching them and drawing them inside your sketchbook. Okay, so let's talk about where we begin and where we start. Okay, so I covered this little principle with you guys the other day about starting with a horizon line, okay, and then having your vanishing point set up and zooming in. Now, the reason why I wanted you to zoom in is this simple, because I knew what would happen is I would get a bunch of students that would come back doing a prop, and they would end up having vanishing points in super close. And there's a time when that works, and there's a time when it doesn't work. Okay, so the time when that works, so there's a reason for the madness of why Phil wanted you to jump in here. Give me a second here. So let me get a couple more interior lines in here. Okay, so there's my rough grid that I just threw out there really quick. Okay, let me expand it maybe out a little bit more this way as well. There we go. Okay, so what I wanted you guys to do was come in here, I'm going to take the marquee tool in here, and I'm going to take a little chunk of the grid right in here, right? And I'm going to copy that, and then I pasted that right on another layer, so that's easy to do in Photoshop. And then what I basically did is we enlarged that grid right now. Sorry, I have a little bit of lag because of Camtasia. So we enlarged that grid, and then we started working off that grid. And the reason why I wanted you to do that is because if you don't do this method for drawing your props, what you're going to do, if I come back here, is that students will come in here and they will start, they will start drawing a rough prop, and they make it like this. They make it huge. And the problem is we discussed this the other day, is that we're getting what we call that fan effect happening, because the vanishing points are too close and the subject matter is too large. So I already knew as an instructor that if I gave you that assignment to draw the props and I didn't have you enlarge the grid, most of you would end up having something that looks completely distorted and that's sort of going outside. It's still inside the cone of vision, but it's not going to look right and correct because it's technically going outside of our little area of the cone of vision, okay? But it's going to feel distorted because the vanishing points are too close. Now, where we really see this and notice this is where we have something that might have some length to it. So if I come over here and if I start to rough in a basic shape for a couch, okay? Now, where I'm going to notice that is the vanishing points are so close, I start to get just a lot of length on my couch. So when I prefer to draw, when I have to sketch ships or anything like that. That's why I like taking that approach of blowing up the grid, which we already talked about. Okay, all right, so let's start from there. Let's come over. Let's take our little grid here, okay? I did make a comment to you about doing some measuring lines on the side, okay? So whatever you're going to draw, what's really important is I did do a little demo for you last class, and I talked about this thing that's called a T, an upside down T, and it's not really a T. All it is this. It's that you're sketching a line, and then you're drawing a vertical, and you're thinking about how an object is hitting the ground plane, where it's identifying to the ground, and then you're thinking about the vertical line that exists there. So let me show you the benefit of doing that T. Okay? So if I come over here, and I just sort of come over here and I put another T upside down there, that's really important for me, and the reason why that is that what I've done here is I have two sets of verticals that allow me to create a center line between them. Okay, so where this, like we mentioned, for a blender this won't really be that important, but if I'm drawing a bug, this could be really important because I have to understand how the legs come out. Okay, so now, if some of you have seen Scott Robertson's book on drawing from your imagination, there's a bunch of other books. There's a really great book on sketching props by, I think it's Eric Husen, who's I think he's a Danish artist, right? Some of these guys, when they're drawing props, you'll see them do this where they talk about, they sort of put this T in like this, and they draw the center line first. So the center line is, imagine if you took something and we dissected it and cut it right in half. Okay, you took an imaginary, your fantasy knife, and you could just slice something right in half, and you would have that middle view of something. That can be really important because it allows us, gives us a feeling of what something might look like. Okay, I'm trying to think of an object that I could do really quick. It's real simple here. Let's say I wanted to have a mouse. Okay, let's say I'm going to sketch a mouse really quick here. So I'm going to imagine that if I cut my mouse in half right now, I know my mouse is going to hit the ground plane here. It's going to be flat, right? My mouse might come up and might round a little bit on some of the edges. And then basically my mouse is going to recede back like this. Maybe it's a little, has some ergonomics on it, where it angles a little bit. There might be a button that might protrude out a little bit. But this is like the base shape. If I were to take my mouse and cut it in half, that's my mouse shape, right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here. I'm going to draw another line that goes across. And then I'm going to draw the width of my mouse that's coming out here. Okay, so now I could imagine, basically I drew this cross section in here, right? So now by coming out and imagining, okay, my mouse is going to come out, it's going to slope down to about here. Then when it gets down to about here, it's going to come down and curve, right? And if I have to find that line, the distance from here to here on the other side, we know how to do that now, right? We can do proportional division. So, but right now we just have a line. So if I want to do that correctly, all I have to do is come over here. Okay, oops, sorry, my ruler slipped there a little bit. Make sure that we get another line here, and then I'm going to receive this line. See that? I just drew this box right here. You see that box? Now I can do proportional division of that box. I can cross it real quick, and I can just even eyeball it real quick. I can look there. I connect from here to here. Boom. So where this line ends here, that's where the other line's going to end back there for my mouse, right? So now I can draw through. I could find that angle that's right in here. And as I connect this and then start to curve this line back to the middle here, I can see how now I'm going to erase these lines in here that I figured that out, right? So now I have two sets of cross-section lines. I have, sorry, that's my pen slipping on here. I have one set of lines that go this way, and then I have the other set that goes this way. Now I just connect the lines around there, right? So now if I come over here, and I'm going to imagine that from where my mouse ends right here, I'm going to have a line that's going to come out. It's going to connect to here. And then this line is going to connect back here to where my mouse ends. Okay. Now on the other side, I'm not going to see that rounding shape, am I? Because it's going to round like this and connect through here, which is going to connect back through there. So what I just did there is I drew through the shape, which is really important. Okay. Now I can come in and put some little details on my mouse. So if I look at the mouse that's up here, this one it comes forward and it has a little bit of a roller, okay? So I could come over here, and I remember I already drew the center line, so I know if I come up here, I'm going to sketch in that little roller right here. That's in the middle. So my mouse has this little roller shape here, okay? So there's a little roller piece. My mouse also has this little angled element that comes over here. It comes down, wraps around, and stops. It has a cord in the front here. That cord comes out, okay, and it wraps around and then bends this way. So the mouse has this little, I'm looking at the little mouse here, the mouse raises up. So if I come up here off the center line, it has this detail that sort of raises a little bit right here. And then it curves down this way and comes back to this side and connects. Okay. Now what's important here is I need to draw through I have all this drawing that's through the shape here. I'm going to lightly erase some of this. So I can take my eraser, go back to like 20%. I'm going to erase some of that. I don't want to get rid of it. I still want to see it to make sure that it's there. Okay, my mouse has actually this mouse here has 2 buttons on it. So it has a center line that comes down, which we sketched in here. Okay, that's the center. And then this is sort of like one button. And then the mouse, let's see, the mouse sort of comes back here. This protrudes up a little bit, so this line sort of drops back a little and then comes back to here. And then let me look at the base. The mouse has this curve on it that after the plastic that wraps down, the mouse has a curve that comes up and around and goes back down around the other side. Okay? And I can actually see through some of this. It has this little line in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase a little bit of the line that I have back down in there. My mouse does this. It sort of comes up. It has a secondary detail. Comes back down, wraps back around here, and that comes back up through here, wraps up through here. It's part of the basic ergonomic design of it. Okay, so you know what? I probably picked the worst thing to draw a mouse because it's thin and small, but that's okay. You get the point, right? Is that I'm drawing through my shapes. Okay, and I figured out by using the T where it starts, I have a center line that goes through my mouse. I figured out the distance from here to here. And let me draw this in red, okay? So I figured out where the center of my mouse is. I know where that distance goes here to the other side. I know that it makes up. I understand where the cross section of my mouse is right here, how that comes up and narrows back down to the other side. Okay, and that probably confused you a little bit because the mouse is skinny and tall. Right, so let's talk about drawing something else. Let's move to another topic here. Let's start with the basics of a bug, let's say. Okay, so let's do the same principle here. Okay, so that principle of using the T is key for me. Whenever I start, I just come over and I sort of lightly sketch this in because it is allowing me to think about my objects and where they hit the ground, and it's allowing me to think about the center line that's going to fit in there. So let's say we're going to draw like a spaceship real quick. Okay. So what I'm going to do here, this might be a little bit easier approach for you guys to see how this is going to work. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take a light red here, and I'm going to draw the center line of my spaceship. So let's say my ship is going to be, I don't even know, let's just throw something in here. Let's say my ship is going to angle up like this, and then my ship's going to drop down to here. And maybe it has an angle that comes back this way a little bit, right? And then maybe my ship is going to angle back this way and end, okay? So that's the center line of my ship, okay? So what I can do right now is I started with that. Now I'm going to draw on top of that, and I'm going to expand into the other directions, okay? So what's cool about this is I understand exactly where the midpoint is. So let's say, now that I have, so imagine if I took my hot knife and I cut through that ship, that's the centerpiece of that ship, right? So now I'm going to imagine I'm going to expand my ship out. Let's say I decide that my ship is going to come out so I'm going to do this with blue here, okay? I'm going to just take a line right here, a dot. I'm going to draw sort of this light dotted line up to the top here to find the middle. And I'm going to come over here now, and I'm going to decide to bring my ship outward to about right here, okay? So I'm going to come down from the base, I'm going to draw outward here. I'm going to round this to about right here. Now watch. I have to understand where that line hits the ground. So to do that, okay, I'm just going to drop a dotted line back down here. I'm going to come back over here from the center, okay, get that measurement of this line that's right here. Because this is the contour of the ship wrapping over that's explaining part of the width of the ship, right? Now I need to do that going back in the other direction. Okay, so once I come over here to do that correctly, just really easily, I can just find that square that's there, right? I find that, I cross it, okay, do proportional division, get it in there, boom. Put that line through, get that line going. So that line would end right here. So then if I come up and draw a dotted line through the other side, find where that end right here is, going to this way, okay? Now I have the other side of the ship, and if I just draw that curve going up, I can see through the other side of the ship. Does that make sense? Does everybody follow with me on that? Now that I've found that out, I can come back in here and finish drawing on my ship a little bit. Now, I might decide, let me sketch on this for a little bit, okay? Let me wrap this up. Let me wrap part of this back into here. I just want to get the, I should do this on another layer. Let's do this like this. On another layer so you can see the center line that's in there. I'm going to come in. I want to get just the object so it feels tangible to you. Okay? Now this connects. Okay, let me see if I can take off the grid now. There we go. Get this line that draws through. Okay, let's take a look at that. See how that feels like a real piece, a real chunk?
Yeah.
Okay, because I've been drawing through, figuring out the shape on a grid. Okay. So I could now take this, and all I have to do is go in there and add little details to my ship. So what I understand right now is I understand the height of the ship because I can see through the middle. I drew that center line of the ship that still exists in there. If I turn this back on, you can see it in red coming down through here. In fact, here I have the little base that comes down like this. Okay. All right, so that's what I have right now. That's the basics of my ship. The rest of it is going in and putting little details on there. Okay, so let's say, obviously, I don't have any fins on my ship. So if I want to put some fins on and understand how those fins come out and how they angle up, I can go inside and start putting some of that information. So let me sketch some of this. What's important to me here, though, and what I'm trying to teach you guys right now in this lesson, is that I basically have this center line underneath here. I understand where the center of my ship is. So let me draw it like this. What's important is that I call it the X and the Y just because of my background with Maya, is I understand the mass going this way. I understand the thickness going this way. I understand exactly where that hits the ground plane. I understand that this to right here going across is pretty much like the dedicated center line. Okay? Everything else that I draw on top of that now will be extruding out from that center mass, if that makes any sense. Okay? Does everyone follow with me with that?
Yeah.
Kelsey, don't fall asleep. Okay, so.
I was just shaking my head, yes.
Okay. Well, no, your eyes are closed. I thought you were falling asleep. Okay, so let me back up a couple steps there. Let me start. We'll put some information on there. Okay. All right. What helps me now is to start wrapping some line on top of that to get little details, and then what we'll do is we'll come in here and we'll add fins. I had the center part from the ship. Oops, let me go back to blue here. It sort of came down and dropped, and I didn't have any connective lines from here, so I'm going to round part of that going back this way. Actually, it did look sort of cool being like that. Let me fix that. Okay, so here, let's come over here. What I like to do whenever I draw a ship, one of the first things, hold on, my Photoshop isn't working. There it goes. I like to come in here and I like to sketch where the cockpit might be. Okay, one little area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to imagine that I have a small like window over here, and those windows are going to wrap around and come up this way. Okay, wrapping over part of that shape and form. Okay, I know that's the center line, and I know how that wraps, so I can't see it wrap around the other side. So here, let me come in here real quick. I'm going to put like a little circle here. Let me put a little fin shape detail that's coming off of this. Okay, my ship protrudes out this way. I'm going to go ahead and draw a nice line coming over part of that body shape in here, coming forward and then wrapping over. I want to get more of a sense of how this shape is coming together. Remember, this extrudes out and comes this way. So this would be a good example here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a fin here that's going to define a little bit more of the body. So I'm going to take this shape right here and I'm going to pull a fin out of it like this. Okay? Now, I did that on one side. I'm going to do that on the reverse side in a minute. Let me extend the back of the ship here. I'm going to pull the ship back. So I'm drawing from the center line, right? See, I'm coming up this way. Now I'm going to add some thickness to it. All right. I'm going to put another fin back here, coming off this back area right here. All right. Secret about drawing a fin. Okay. Do we all understand how to draw the top of a roof?
Yeah.
Okay. It's like this. So I'm going to draw it for you really quick here. Little side note. We draw a house, right? When we have a house, when we want to find the roof, what do we have to do? We have to find the center line of that square, right? So if we cross that square right here, and then we come up, that's the center, correct? From that center then, we just pick a point, and then we draw the lines that recede back out from there. Does that make sense? That's how the top of a house goes. So it's that same principle for drawing a fin. Okay, so remember I have the center line of my object here. I'm going to draw this in red so it's a little easier to see right now. So look, here's the center line of my object. It goes right down here, and it comes up, back in here. So all I need to know is, you see this fin right here? Remember how I drew through, I knew where the other side of the ship is right there. You see that? It's right here on that red dot. So when I draw this fin right here, look, now I'm gonna draw the top of the house. I just take this line that goes through, where it hits that point, I go vertical with it, like that. And when I draw the fin, when that fin hits that point right there, that's the top of my house. Does that make sense? So now I just connect that line back through the other side. Okay? And that would be the angle of that fin coming through the other side. Okay? Now I need to do the same thing, though, for this front piece here. I have a different angled fin that's right there. Okay? So not to get, what I'm going to do is, it's easier. What I should have done is this. This is going to complicate things for you guys since you're newbies. I'm going to actually make the fin a little bit more, I'm going to make the fin parallel like this because it'll be easier to understand. So now when I did that back side, now if I come over here, let's do the same thing here. I'm going to draw a line here going through there. Boom. Right there is where this angle is going to come through the other side. Okay, so I figured that out. Let me do it in red now so you can see it. Okay, there's the center line. Okay, I drew that fin through the other side. It's being foreshortened. That's the center right there. Okay, now I'm going to come over here. Let's draw a vertical line coming up. I'm going to draw that fin, hits right there. There's the dot. Then I'm going to draw that coming back through the other side. See that? How it hits? That's now that fin on the other side. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, what I need to do is I need to know where this line ends, and that's pretty easy because all I have to do is if I take the line here where that ends, bring it across to there, and I just recede that back to the same vanishing point, which goes right there. So this other fin is going to be right here. Okay? That makes sense? But that's the same principle of how I drew the roof of the house. So let me draw that really quick again here. Here's my house, right? I crossed it, found the center, raised that line, and I knew if that angle goes that way, all I have to do is connect that angle through there, right? Well, it's the same thing in drawing my ship, okay? Once I found, since I have the center line in there, all I have to do is draw an angle coming this way, going up, and then draw, basically, it's that same roof line coming down the other way. And then it's the same thing for that fin. Now, let's say my fin had that angle on it, right? Remember how my fin had an angle? It went from here to there? So all I have to do is find out this on the other shape. And that's easy. I just take a line in perspective, I mark right here, and then I draw that line going back in perspective, boom, it hits right there. Then I draw a line from here to here. So this shaded area is that shaded area right there. Does that make sense? That's how I got the angle of the fin in there. But what does the fin exist in first? A square. So you draw the squares first and the cubes that all the shapes exist inside. Okay? All right. I know when I do a demo like this, it can get a little mind-numbing because you have all these lines in there and it gets a little confusing. But do you see how my ship is coming together? How it feels realistic, it feels tangible. Okay? So there's a certain point that we do all this, and then we have to put the grid away. And then we just have to go draw. Because then you understand a little golden rule about whenever you have an object and there's stuff coming out of the center of that object. A bug, a spider, what's something that's round, like a clock where something radiates from the middle, right? It's really important to consider and think about the center line of that particular object. Because then you can figure out the fins, and you could, like, now I could come back here and I could figure out how to draw this fin right in here. Because all I have to do is come in here, match that perspective, right? Draw a line that goes up, find the center of that vehicle, okay? And then all I have to do is then come over here, find the middle, draw a line up. So that's a real close connection point. I come over, I find that angle right there, and then what I would do on this case is I would try to get a nice angled in here, and then I would come through and draw that on the other side. There, so the back of that fin will be hitting here, and then what I would do is draw sort of that square shape again, get it to be parallel, to figure it out, connect through the other side. Okay, so on the other side, we're going to have up there, it gets sort of squeezed in here a little bit. My fin is going to be sort of angled through. It's going to be foreshortened a little bit. It's going to be about here because it's coming right off of that corner. So that's going to be what it looks like if I drew through it on the other side. Okay? So there's a way to figure all that stuff out. I actually look at that now and I don't like that fin on there. It was okay, but problem is this is so squeezed together, it's really hard to get like a decent angle to come off of that. So what I do is I just freehand the stuff and then figure it out just by sketching it in just a little bit. There, that pinched together to have a little bit better effect on it. Okay? All right, so there's a point then, what I want you guys to do is when you're doing anything with the center line, there's a point when it works and there's a point where it doesn't work. Okay? It's easier to do subtracted and additive methods of drawing. However, though, there will be a point when you're doing that method of drawing where you have to understand where the center line is. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you, I know that probably confused some of you guys, we're going to talk about the additive and subtracted method of drawing. I'm going to show you how easy this is. This is what we're going to work on for a while, but then when we're working on this, if you get stuck on something, go back at the very end and I want you to draw the center line on the object, okay? So I had to show you that first though. I know that might scare the daylights out of some of you guys, of figuring out how to draw ships and vehicles and using center lines, but we will come back to that. Because what's important now is that we move into talking about shape and how shapes work. So this is what I want you guys to do. We're going to talk now, the rest of this demo is going to be about the additive and subtractive methods of sketching, okay? This is what we're going to do. This is how easy it is. So I'm still going to sketch in my little T though. That to me, that's, you know, really, really important because it allows me to see through part of what I'm drawing, okay? So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to come in here, I'm going to draw a really basic cube. Okay? Oops. There we go. Let's get this done in here. Keep it nice and tight. This way, and this goes back there. There we go. Okay? And I can see, oops, sorry. I can see through my cube here, which is important to me. There we go, that's that back wall I was wanting. And that sometimes just the Cintiq roller slides a little bit. Yeah, it was ending about right there. There we go, okay? So this is what additive and subtractive is. I have my cube, I can see through it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now I don't have an accurate center line in there yet because in order to do that, I need to find the middle. So to find a center line real quick, I'm going to do this, boop, put a little line there, come back from edge to edge here, there. Now I understand where the center of my little cube is. So what I'm going to do is let me just recede that line back here. I'm going to do it as a dotted line. Okay. Uh-oh. I changed color by accident. Go. Let's get this dotted line in here. Now, additive and subtractive is basically me adding and subtracting shapes from that. So let's talk about adding. Let's talk about extrusion. That's when I grab something and I pull it and I bring it out. Okay? So I'm going to come over here right now. I'm going to put a line down here. I'm going to take this face. We're going to sketch it on it real quick. Take that whole face, and I'm going to pull it outward. So to do that, I'm going to grab it right here. And if I were to pull that whole entire face outward, it would look like this. Let's draw through the shape. Here we go. Okay? Sorry, I have a little bit of, one of the things I hate about drawing on a Cintiq is that if it's slightly off, my ruler slides a little bit and then I miss ends. Okay, but you see how I just did that? You see how I grabbed that face and I pulled it out? Okay? Let's do the same thing then. Let's come back to another part of the shape. Let's come back here. I'm just going to divide this here. Okay? And I'm going to grab a chunk of this. Let's say we're going to grab this upper chunk right here. Right there. We're going to grab that and we're going to pull it outward. Okay? So I come back here. I match up all my grid. And pull that piece out. Pull that out. Now the top of it, I'm getting a little close to my horizon line there, so it gets a little bit harder to see, but that's okay, right? There, I pulled that out. Okay, there, do you see how I did that? Okay, now what gets to be really helpful is that if I come back in at the very end of this and put a little bit of shading and think of my light coming from a particular direction, it allows me to see my chunks a little bit more. But see where I pulled this out? I'm going to go back and pull out the other side. That's going to be a little bit harder to see though, right? Because I'm at this tight angle, but this is all I have to do. Let me do it in red here. Okay, I'm going to draw a dotted line going across. Matching perspective, dot, 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 dot. about right there. So then from this line, now I'm going to use blue. And then go back out that way. And then pull that out like so. There, and then it's going to come down. Okay, so it's really hard to see there from that particular point of view. But you see how I stretched the distance from here, and then I pulled it out to about here. But it's hard to see because of that particular angle. If I was looking down on this, that probably wasn't the best example. So let's just keep working on this, and I'll keep pulling out some more little ends and shapes. Okay, so now we've been pulling out and extruding. What happens when we subtract from our shapes? So let me do that right up here. Okay, I'm going to draw through this. So look, I pulled that face out. So when we subtract is when I cut into my shapes. So if I come over here right now and I decide that I want to take a chunk out right here of my shape. Okay, I'm going to eliminate that line. What happens when I do that?
I got it mixed up.
So now I have to receive this back, right? Boom. Let's say I don't want to bring it all the way to the wall. Hold on, that's the ruler slipping again. There we go. Okay, so if I take a chunk out of that, and now I have to find the interior lines, right? So I come back over here, and I draw this line, coming back to there. And look, I can even draw through the shape. There, see that? So I took a chunk out of there. So now I can look at this. Let me do a little bit of shading. That can be a little easier to see sometimes. Let me go see what brushes are in here. Sorry, someone else has this set up without my preferences. Here we go. So I'm going to take this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shade. See if I put a little bit of this on here in Photoshop, it's a little easier to see how I just carve that chunk out there. And then you see how I carve that chunk out here. Okay. Here I'm going to put a little bit of shading on the back side there, a little bit on this side right here. Okay. I want to keep extruding and pulling shapes out of this. I've only done a couple right now. Let me just go back to my brush. Okay. All right. So let's say I want to take a huge chunk out of the corner of that. So let's say my knife, my imaginary knife, came across and slit this end right here. Okay, I took that chunk off right there. And then it went all the way to this side here. So now I can erase these lines in the middle. Okay, and then I just connect from this line to this line, which looks like it's almost a straight line. And part of that's because of our relationship to the horizon line. Okay? All right. So, but you see now if I were to shade that, let me go back and switch to another brush. Let's do the same thing here. Let's measure that. If I come across here to the back side, measure that to here. I'm just going to eyeball it and see I took that chunk off right there. Now, but what happens when I take that chunk off right there? What am I going to see? I'm now going to see this cube I pulled out on the other side. You see that? Because I took a chunk off out of it. Because this other part was extruding out here, I'm going to see that cube on the back side. Okay? So what I want you to do is, we'll come back to the center line in another demo. I want you to be taking these big shapes and cutting into them and pulling shapes out. In fact, this is a little close to the horizon line. It's almost too close. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just pull a big chunk of this going upward and out. Now, I don't have a grid here, so I'm going to have to eyeball that. Okay. There we go. So see how I pulled another big chunk out of the top? Right there? Let's pretend we're going to splice that right down the middle. Okay, so let me draw through the shape, right? Here's that back corner, it's right there. It's going to be about right there. oops, a little bit of slippage on the ruler there. And that's going to be going back here. There we go. So I drew through it. Now I'm going to take a huge chunk out of the middle part. Okay? So I'm going to come over here, draw a line down, draw a line down. Seed this back to my vanishing point. And then I'm just going to erase this. Now I need to figure out what's existing in there. Well, I need to take this top line and do what? I need to recede that back. And if I draw a dotted line, where that hits right here will be that inside wall. You see that? How I did that, okay? So here, that's incorrect. Now I just need to come over here. This is fine, that cut mark is there, but I need to recede this dotted line back to understand where that back side is. So it would be about there, from where I took that chunk out. Okay? So then it gets easier if I keep doing that, if I keep adding, subtracting, take parts out. Let's say I decide to come, what else should I do? I'm just trying to think of something real quick here. I carved little parts off here. Let's put a little set of wings on there, because see how it starts to get a little ship-like here? So let's just, I'm going to come over here and take a small sliver right here, this right here. I'm going to pull that out and make a little wing. Now as I pull it out and make a little wing, I'm going to make sure I have the wing on the other side, and that's where the center line comes in. That's where that's important. So look, I'm just going to go ahead and pull this out to here. I'm going to stop right there. Let's go up. And then I'm going to connect this back to this, like so. There. So now if I were to shade it a little bit, let's do a little bit of shading. I think is really helpful, because if you come in here, we're not shading like rendering. Oops, whoa, that's way too strong. Let's go down about it too. We're just putting a light gradient on the side walls that allow us to see the difference in shape. Okay? So do you see how I pulled that little chunk out right there? Let's go back and do it on the other side. Okay? So how do I do that? This is where that center line comes in. This is the importance of the center line. Okay? So I have a little dotted line inside my demo right now. Can you see it, where the center is?
Yeah.
It's this line that's going, I'm sorry, let me change brush again. Oops. Let's go back to my drawing brush, go to 100%. Okay, so here's that center line. It's right here, going across. I already drew it in there when I started. Remember, I found the middle, and I put that line going right down the middle. That's important to me right now. Why is that important to me? Because to find this distance from here to here, I just do proportional division through the other side. I need to find the square that this shape exists in. This, okay, this element right here, I know it extrudes out, but I need to find it from the middle going out. Does that make sense? I'm flopping over the whole side. So I find that whole rectangular shape that this exists in, right? Because I know on the other side of the box, start with what you know. You know you're going to be coming out right here. And then you know if I draw through to the other side of the box, back here, you know you're going to be connecting at this point right here, right? We'll call that point A. And then here's point B, because here's A in the front, and here's B, excuse me. Yeah, that's right, point A, here's B in the back. Okay, but we need to do it from the center. Let me draw a top view. Here's the middle of my ship, right? I have, oops, that was horrible. I have a wing that comes out. This jets down like so, right? In order for me to flip this to the other side, I have to do it from the center. That makes sense. So what I do is I take the whole measurement of this from here to here to here, right? I do proportional division, find the middle, and then bring that line over. And then where that hits on the other side is my wing, and then all I have to do, once I find this, that's my, we'll call that C, that C right there, all I have to do is connect C to right there to get the other wing line. See how I did that in a plane view? So now I'm going to do it in a drawing view. When I come back here, okay, let me switch to another color, see if I can do this in a, what's a good color? Maybe a green will pop out there. Okay, so let's do the proportional division. Let's find the middle of that square. Okay, recede that back this way. All right, we're going to connect from here through here, and where that hits this line will be the ending of C on the other side. So we're going to go through here, through that line, boom. Where it hit right there, that is the same distance. This distance from here is the same distance as what's right there. Does that make sense? We're flipping it on the other side. I know it's starting to look like a geometry equation with the green and everything in there, but just bear with me, right? So here, we did that really quick. I sketched through here. I found that other side. Now, all I have to do, C went right to A, right? So I just draw a straight line on the other side here, from here to here. So that's that wing on the other side of the ship. I can't see it. Does that make sense? Everyone follow with me how I did that? Just draw through the shape. I can't see it in that particular instance. However, though, if I was drawing like a bug, that's why we draw bugs a lot. And we draw things where there are legs radiating out from a center mass. So airplanes have wings that radiate out from a center mass, right? Everything that the majority, car doesn't really have anything that radiates out from the center mass. Okay, that's why a lot of instructors tend to give you those assignments of go draw different types of planes, different types of vehicles, floating vehicles, futuristic vehicles, whatever, because you're having to draw through the shape and understand what is on the other side. In fact, that right there, folks, is part of the secret to drawing, is people that know how to draw correctly. They understand how to draw through the shape and understand what is on the other side. Okay, the other day in my prop class, I had students turning this in. I had someone that did a cylinder, and they did this. What's wrong about that? In order to find that angle of that ellipse, you have to understand the square that it exists in, but most important, you have to understand that ellipse, how it comes through and wraps through to the back side. The way it wraps through on the back side right here will dictate the angle right in here and how it wraps around. You can't just go, That's the shortcut. That's cheating. Okay, you have to understand how that whole ellipse cuts through the entire object, and then we have to understand how we can see through that. Okay? So, let me take that off. So a great way to start when we do the subtractive and the additive method of drawing is just to start with some really basic shapes. And what I like about this is it's just about having fun. So just sit down and draw what feels right to you. So look, I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to draw freehand. I'm not going to use the ruler. Okay? I'm going to come in here. I'm going to eyeball some of this and just map out what feels right to me. Okay? Oops. We get that other end in there. And look, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to draw a center line down there. I said I wouldn't use the ruler, right? There. Okay. Okay, that's it. I start with a really simple shape, and now I start extruding and subtracting off the top of it. If I came in here with a knife and cut part of this cylinder, okay, that's a little touchy because it's angled, but let's say I decided to cut it in half right here and take a chunk out. So I'm going to cut from here, going back this way. I'm underneath my horizon line right now. I'm going to try to sketch in that ellipse the best I can. There we go. And then I'm going to cut through to right here. Okay, so then I'm going to erase the sides here. I just cut that whole chunk out. And if I look down on top of it, There you go. That's what I'm going to have. Okay? So no rulers. I'm just freehanding. Okay? I'm going to come over here and take this piece. There's a curve on that, right? It's curving with the surface. I'm going to pull this piece out this way. Like so. Okay. Maybe I might decide to come in here. Now I'm going to find that new center line in the middle there, right there. I might connect. I want to connect this top chunk to the bottom chunk. So I'm just going to take a little piece in here. I'm going to draw a little square. And then I'm just going to connect that down to this here. Boom. Oops. Trying to get the undo to go, but the memory's getting killed here on Photoshop. Okay, there you go. I'm just going to keep working on this. I'm looking up at this, right, at that angle. It's up there, so maybe I decide to, let's get daring. What would happen if we took a knife and slit it, like right down the side there? What would you see? So let's start with the ends first. We would be intersecting here, and then we'd be intersecting the back side. So I can put a straight line between those 2 points, right? And then what I can do is I can erase that top. So I know I'd be seeing that line. What I need to do then is establish the length of the blade of where it hit through. So let's say it hit right here on the side, okay? So then I'm going to just draw a curved line. And that's the hard part, is getting that curved line in there. It's going to be curving because the surface is rounded, okay? But that's okay for right now. I'm going to do this freehand. There, I just took a chunk out of the side of it, okay? Let's come over here. I'm going to imagine that I'm going to sketch in a little square that's on that surface. And here it's straight. Why? I'm on the horizon line right there, right? Okay? And I'm going to pull this out, but instead of pulling it out straight across, I'm going to pull it out upward at an angle. So look, I'm going to take that chunk. All I have to do is keep my lines parallel to each other, like so. And then I'm going to come in here and put up the other lines. There we go. Okay? So do you see what I'm doing right now? That's additive and subtractive methods of drawing. Is I'm taking one large shape and I'm just cutting into it. I'm pulling out, which we call extruding, and then I'm cutting other areas and segments into that, okay? So what I want you guys to do for homework over the weekend, I'll give you some time to work on it in class, and then I'll come around and answer any questions, is I want you to sit down, I want you to do 5 shapes like this. Start with a cube, and just start pulling out and doing all kinds of fun with it, and getting used to carving into it. Yes, sir?
Can you do cylinders? Like what
You can do a cylinder, but you need to make sure, what does your cylinder exist in?
A box.
A box. Draw the square first, but I wouldn't do all cylinders.
Okay.
Start simple. So some of you guys can't even draw a box right. So get that drawn first, right? So I want to show you, you know. So like, I can draw a cylinder space station. And you're like, no, don't, go back. So look, real quick, I want to come up here. Let's go back to our blog, r243f.blogspot.com. I hope today's lecture did not complicate anything with you guys. I want to come back. Remember the notebook samples I put up here? Look at this right here. That's Michael's. That's an excellent job. Do you see that? You can see the center lines in there, and you can see how he's extruding and pulling shapes out. Okay? I know this might have been complicating to some of you today. If you get this under your belt, it will change the way that you guys are what I call like my youngins. You're like my newbies, right? You're getting your first like dose of a real perspective class, okay, from someone who's in the industry. If you spend time into this, look at every one of these drawings. Do you feel how tangible it is? It's funny, I look at this here, and that's the transport ship in Star Trek that they go from ship to ship in. A little basic one. It's the same exact shape. Okay? So every one of these, you see how he just cut in there and cut chunks out, pulled and extruded? This is what I want you to do right here. This is going to go in your notebook. This was Michael's page right here. Okay? This is where all of drawing starts to change for some of you. When I'm drawing an airplane or ships or whatever types of vehicles, the first thing that I do is I start with the core shape that exists in. So a fighter plane exists inside a long stretched rectangle. Inside that rectangle is the fuselage, which is a round cylinder. After I get the round cylinder stretched, I then come in and I do the wings. I know how to do the wings because I know how to find the center line of the vehicle. And all I have to do when I do the wings is I need to think about the top of a house, right? So, watch, let me come and sketch something for you real quick, okay? All right, so when I'm working on stuff, let's say I was working on a vehicle. This is how, now let me stand up and do this because I tend to draw more like this and like move around a little bit. So here, if I'm going to draw something, let's say I'm going to start with a vehicle here really quick. Okay. Now I'm cheating a little bit. Why? Because I'm going right to the cylinder. But I'm not really cheating because I'm still putting down the center lines very quickly. Okay. All right. So there's how I start. That's my core shape. I have that. Then I come over here and then I think, okay, maybe I have front of my cockpit drops down. I'm going to have a part of that cockpit be right here, let's say. Then I have a center wing to my plane. Okay. All right. And let's say I want to make it different. I want to have two fins on my plane. A fin in the front and a fin in the back, a different wing. Okay, so I see where that mass is here. Actually, maybe it's cool if I just, instead of being more circular, what if I bring that and drop it down more like this on my plane? I'm going to bring that body out a little bit more. And then maybe part of that body curves in here, okay? Then I'm going to come over here. I know where the center line is right now. Let me switch back to red. My original center line I sketched was right in here. Okay? That's of use to me now, because as I come in here and I sketch a couple wings, uh-oh, I didn't mean to do that. I wanted this a little longer. Let's say that's one fin. Maybe I decide to have another fin on my plane here. We're not talking about design now. We're just talking about drawing something very quickly. Okay. Obviously, this isn't the best design in the world. If I wanted to design my plane here, what I would do is I would come back into it and do a series of silhouettes. Now, here, I have to be careful of this, is that I widen the body, and so the body back here sort of comes up and then over. If I draw through the shape, it's going to look like this in the back here, okay? And that's going to come down to about here. So you can see, now I can see the other side of my plane in there. So if I draw a fin here, I'm going to make sure it's going back in perspective here. I'm going to pull that fin back this way. Fin, okay, there. So that's my quick little roughing my vehicle. The secret now is me drawing the fins on the other side. And I go back to that principle of my house, right? That if I have the center, and then I could find that point, and I just find the lines that radiate off of it, right? So if I look up here on the front, there's my center, right? My ship. I have this line is going this way, so I know the other line is going to go this way. I have an angle to my fin, which is going like in here, so then I can draw that angle through part of the other side. Now I'm eyeballing this. I know that that distance from here to here is about that distance, so I'm not going to really see part of the fin right on the other side. However, though, this is a lot longer, so from my center line from here to here, I know that that distance is probably about yay. Actually, I won't see that either. Because then if I come back over here, the other fin's going to be about there on the other side. Because that's where the other side is. So if I pulled my wing out even further, I'd see it more. Okay? But just sketch, have fun. It's funny, I'm not in a prop mode anymore. Whenever I get into certain things, like props or vehicles or whatever, it takes me a couple sketches to get into that mode. I'm in environment land now because that's all I've been painting lately and working on are environments, okay? But I don't want you to get into complex ships right now. That's not the goal. I shouldn't have even drawn that. In fact, I might even cut that out of the demo really quick. That's what I want you to be doing, is simple shapes like this and like that. Grabbing surfaces, pulling them out. Now, if you're using Photoshop, it can be really useful because you can come in here and you can put down that tone, right? And then you can come in here and then easily erase any overspray that you have and see it allows you to see the back side of that particular shape or object that you have. So this would be a good example. I have one key shape I started with, and I did about 7 different cuts and extrusions into it. That's what we want. We want you to think like that. So as we leave, just remember, you can go back here to the class blog, right, and take a look at Michael's right there. It's exactly what we did. And I think I have another blog linked up to this, another demo from last term. And so I'll put both up. I'll render this one and I'll link it up there. So this is really important. That's what we're going for here, okay? I could do another demo, but some of you guys look like you're falling asleep a little bit. I'd rather you have time to draw in class, and if you have any questions, I could come around and talk with you. So the common question is, where do I start? And my answer every time is draw a cube, and then start going off of that cube. And then the great thing about that is when you get into something more complex, like when you're working in a studio one day, and let's go back and take a look at the wonderful and super duper awesome Fengzu, okay? And you're working on a project, and somebody wants you to draw a series of, hold on a minute, I need to force, I can't, preview is showing up on another screen since we have the dual monitor floating world here. So and when someone wants you to draw super enlarged bugs or creatures fighting other creatures that nobody's ever seen before, or vehicles or flying ships, you have to be able to go back to this approach, which is understand the boxes and the shapes that everything exists inside. Okay? And boy, I got to tell you, I mean, it's cool. You guys got to visit Fengzu's site. It's an awesome site. He has all kinds of great reference, and it's all free. Okay? If I wish I had my way and I could go to the Philippines and go to a school. You know what I mean? I wish I was a student again sometimes, because when I was a student, we didn't have all this information available to us, and it wasn't as easy as it is for you guys today. Okay? Luckily, you have online, so have fun drawing.